Welcome back, traders and investors. We have a portfolio manager on the line, actually a co-portfolio manager of the Hennessy Quarterstone Mid Cap 30 Fund, Brian Puri. Brian, how you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on this morning.
Oh, glad to have you on. We got a real live fund manager here. So first of all, tell us a little bit about your firm and how long your fund's been around and how it's doing this year.
Well, the firm's been around since 1989, and we've been running mutual fund assets since the mid 90s. The firm basically has 16 different funds and kind of covers a broad gamut of different investor classes, everything from Japanese stocks to domestic. I play more in the domestic side of it. The fund that I kind of oversee is our Mid Cap 30 Fund, which is simply 30 stocks that are all domestic stocks. There are no international except for some exposure that they have because they're larger businesses that have sales overseas. The way that this particular fund is run is that what we do is we use a quantitative process so that we have this repeatable process that we can do every year. And it starts with us looking at about 12,000 public companies. What we'll do is we'll segment out companies that have a market capitalization between $1 billion and $10 billion. So we're looking for what we call, the mid-cap space. And, we really like that space because they're large enough companies that they kind of have a defensible market position, but they're small enough so that any, good business items really transfers down to the shareholders in terms of increased earnings. What we'll do is when we look at these companies, we have some certain key criteria that they have to meet. So our first one is that they have to have a price to sales ratio below 1.5. And that simply means that we don't pay more than $1.50 for a dollar in sales. So if a company has $1 billion in revenue, then they can't have a market capitalization more than $1.5 billion. The next thing we look for is we look for increasing earnings on a year-over-year basis. So we're not looking at the quarter to quarter and the real fluctuations there. We're looking at the longer-term trend of year over year to make sure that that company's growth is actually being transferred to the shareholder. And then the final things we look at are relative strength or momentum over 3, 6, and 12-month periods. So it has to be positive in all three of those periods, and then we'll rank those stocks. We'll take the top 30 that meet all our investment criteria, and we'll allocate an equal amount to every single one of those 30. So we're not trying to pick which ones are going to do better than the others within that category. We want equal exposure to all of them, and we hold them for roughly a year. If when we go back and do our rebalancing on the portfolios, if they continue to meet our criteria, we pair them back to their original 3.3% weighting. If they no longer meet our criteria, we sell the stock and replace it with one that does.
When you say mid cap, what's the market caps of the stocks you're looking at? Because some people will define mid cap differently. I'm just curious.
Yeah, we look between 1 billion and 10 billion.
Okay.
I mean, it's really kind of maybe the upper end of the small cap and the lower end of the large cap, but that's our hard fast criteria is between 1 and 10 billion. So if we own a stock and it happens to go from 9 billion to 15 billion, we'll continue to hold it until that rebalance period comes up, and then once it doesn't meet our criteria of being over 10 billion, under 10 billion anymore, we'll sell the stock.
And how are the volume in the issues that you trade? I mean, you're not looking at small caps, you're not looking at big caps. You're looking at mid caps. Do you ever run into liquidity issues? And more specifically, we just had Eric Hunsater on the line, and he was talking about the prevalence of high frequency trading. Do you see any problems in the markets as far as entering your positions? Do you do it through a VWAP or a TWAP? And how are the volume in the stocks that you trade?
One of the key criteria that we do look at is liquidity in there. We know that it's going to take some time to get into and out of some of these stocks. We generally, as a rule, don't like to be more than 10% of the average daily volume on any given day. So we know that part of what makes us so successful is the relationship that we have with our traders and not leaving a footprint in the market, so that because everything that we do is in the public domain, and in the sense that we publish everything about how the investment strategy works in our prospectus, and it's all there for everybody to see. So we really have to hide our hands very well. I think that what we've seen is that it does take a little time to get into and out of those stocks. Much better than some of the small caps, but it doesn't have the same kind of volume that some of the larger caps do. We haven't run any issues with high frequency trading. I think that we've got some great execution teams that have been doing this for 15, 20 years for us, and we really have a great deal of confidence in our traders.
So it's not something you hear from your traders where, I'm having real difficulty getting in or out of this stock, or it's too thin. They seem to have adapted to this new high frequency trading world.
Yeah, I think so, and I think it comes up on an each individual stock basis. I mean, some stocks you're going to have to take a little bit more of a kid gloves approach and really not put it into a VWAP or a TWAP or anything like that. Sometimes on these more liquid names, I think it's easier just to say, okay, here's my benchmark, here's what I want to do for the day, and we're happy to have them kind of beat by 1 or 2 basis points on a VWAP. But there are instances where we've had the situations where you may have a stock that that trades 20,000 shares a day, and you own 400,000 shares. We've got a bunch of really savvy traders who will go even back to the companies who have repurchase plans in place and say, hey, we've got a block for you we can do without moving the market. And so there's opportunities there that's why you have the single stock traders, and they really do a great job for us.
Okay, moving to just a broader view of the U.S. equity markets and economy. I mean, tremendous run in the market here. Showed a little bit of weakness last week. We bounced right back. Much of the rally's been predicated on the stance of the Fed. Fed does look like it's gonna end QE sometime this year. Does that change your outlook on the markets?
I think we've been bullish on the markets for some time, and we still kind of maintain that high single digit, low double digit, forecast of what we think that the markets are going to do, a year out. I think that the Fed ending QE and later this year potentially is really a positive for the markets. I think that if you can take away that backstop from the Fed and say, why are they doing that? Well, it's because they're comfortable with the current situation. And so we're starting to see kind of all of the changes in the underlyings that we need. We want to see more job growth. We want to see higher capital expenditures from corporations. And so all of these are starting to come in. Now the question is going to be, we've been waiting for some quarters now to see, okay, well, we've seen everybody cut their costs and really drive their bottom line earnings. What we're still waiting to see is, can they show that top line revenue growth, above, say, a 3% bogey? We'd love to see these companies come into the second quarter when there's no more weather-related issues and really show us what they can do in terms of, if we've got everything behind us, how quickly are they growing that top line revenue? And I think that's going to be paramount as we come into this week.
Brian, obviously we've been on an extended run here in the markets, and you've been positioned well, it sounds like. What do you like here, though? Like we've been, we start talking, when you talk fundamental stocks have really been on a tear. Is there some stuff that's on your radar here right now that you think are still, got that good value and, look good to you?
Yeah, I think we've been fortunate in that we don't play kind of in that high growth area. We're more growth at a reasonable price. So, we don't own biotech stocks. We don't own, a lot of the technology stocks that have had, valuation concerns. I think where we really see some opportunity is in some of the more consumer cyclical names, some industrials, some consumer discretionary names. Names that we think that as we continue to grow and as the economy continues to get better, will do better than the overall market.
You got any specific stocks you want to give us?
Sure. I mean, there's a few. Some of our biggest holdings is Avis Budget Car. I think that they're a great company. They've absolutely been knocking the cover off the ball. They've had a great run up, but I think that there's still a lot of room for this stock to move, because if you can look at something like their acquisition of Zipcar, we've really come to a situation where there's only a few rental car companies, and we really like the Zipcar approach, where if you can roll Zipcar out to kind of a global network as opposed to just a North American, that we think that it's going to be a really attractive opportunity from 2014 and beyond. We like companies that are generating kind of high free cash flow numbers so that they can do these accretive acquisitions or share repurchases or add to dividends or initiate dividends. And I think that a lot of the companies that we own are sitting on fairly sizable cash positions, so that they can do these things to kind of reward shareholders in the form of repurchases or dividends. And if opportunities arise, make these smart acquisitions that kind of drive the bottom line. It's getting tougher to drive growth organically in this environment. So you're looking at these acquisitions as a way to kind of bring companies together and then use some synergies of them to really drive top line revenues while cutting costs at the same time.
Is there anything out there that's looking a little frothy to you that, perhaps you might be taking some profits in? Or you said you do a yearly rebalancing. Additional question. So you don't change anything within that year if it hits a target point on the upside or downside?
We look at, so what we do is we'll look at every single 8K and 10Q that comes out for every single company we own, and we'll look at it and say, okay, if there's any kind of restatements and that would change our kind of our thinking about the company, we will go ahead and sell it and replace the stock. But as a general rule, we give the companies a year to work out. I mean, we do enough research on it that say, okay, a year is kind of that time frame where we're not looking at the quarter to quarter basis. There's been a number of acquisitions of companies that are in our portfolios, and so once they announce those acquisitions too, we'll get out of those, because what generally tends to happen is when they announce the acquisition, the stock kind of goes up to where the acquisition price is, and so we'll use that opportunity to kind of exit and reallocate to the ones that we like. So that happens throughout the year, and then I think that we kind of look at it and say, we try not to, we don't follow the fads, trends, and hunches and say, okay, well, this is a hot sector, so this is where we need to move it. We have a methodology that tells us over time we know that we can build portfolios that will do hopefully better than the benchmarks with the lower risk profile, and part of that is to not trade so much and say, okay, let's not keep flipping stocks to add some volatility to it. We look at it and we say, okay, we need to look for the longer term. How do we keep, everything on a long-term basis so that we can be more tax efficient and also keep our trading costs down? And, kind of that 1 year for us is the sweet spot. So ideally, when we hold the stock, it's for a year and a day so that we can push everything to a long-term gain.
Okay, Brian mentions a couple important points there, picking your spots and not over trading. Well, we've had Brian Peary on the line, co-portfolio manager of the Hennessy Cornerstone Midcap 30 Fund, symbol HFMDX, if you want to take a look at that. Brian, thanks for coming on, giving us your perspective on the markets, and we hope to have you on again.
Thanks, gentlemen. Have a great day.
Thanks,
Okay.
Brian.